With me is my great friend, my partner for many, many years in our advocacy efforts internationally, Martin Youmaran, one of our foremost leaders in the United States and also internationally. It's such an honor for me to be able to speak with you, Martin Youmaran. Your story that you're going to share in this segment is extremely harrowing. So I cannot wait for my peers to hear your family story and all that happened in Lebanon. Please take a moment to introduce yourself. Tell us where you were born. Obviously, you are a U.S. citizen, but where were you born? Where were your parents born? Let's just have a conversation. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Juliana. It's an honor to be with you and your peers to share our story. I was born in 1975, May of 1975, in Beirut, Lebanon, during a crazy time in Lebanon, the start of the Civil War. And my family were migrants. Their goal was to get to the United States, and similar to today's uh, stories of migrants trying to get to the U.S., ours were Christians who were being persecuted in the Middle East, left Iraq, their homeland, ancestral homeland of Assyria, as you know, to get to Lebanon because they were hearing that the world churches were getting Christians out the U.S. to Australia to other countries, but you'd have to go to Lebanon. And so my parents, who were born in Iraq, and my sister, just me and my sister, was also who's a year and a half older than me, um, was born in Iraq, and they went to Lebanon with a lot of the other Assyrian Christians who then lived in the Assyrian quarter of Lebanon in Beirut, and and then the Civil War broke out in 1975. Civil War was between Islamic extremists that were trying to take over and trying to kill Christians, Syrian Christians, and then it was between them. The only people who weren't in that war were Armenians, and they were neutral in this case. So if you were Armenian, you were able to go through checkpoints and clear as long as because they weren't, but Syrians were being targeted and persecuted. If I can just delve into my story, I can tell you I'm grateful and I'm glad, and the only way I'm here today is because of our Armenian neighbor. I forgot his name. I have to check with my dad again with his name, but he was my dad's best friend, one of his closest friend, our neighbor, they were very close and worked together and everything. And when the war broke out, my mom, who was pregnant with me, needed to go to the hospital because she was in labor. Well, they were bombing everywhere, and there's checkpoints, and the extreme Christians could not get through the checkpoints. The only way, like I said, you can get through was being Armenian. So at that point, our Armenian neighbor took my mom and took her to the hospital to get her to the hospital. Said, "This is my wife; she's going into labor," and showed us ID or whatever, and then got us through, and then dropped my mom off there, and then had to come back through all the bombing and everything that was taking place because it was continuous fighting. My mom gave birth to me, and 3 days later, they came and picked her up and got her out. And when they got us back home, again, through navigating those Civil War tensions, and as people know, the Civil War was breaking out. It wasn't just like in a field; it was just in the towns and in the city. So streets and neighborhoods were being targeted because Christians live one place and Muslims in other places, and this was the influx that they were trying to take us over. So that being said, my mom was able to bring me home, but then I fell malnourished because I was newborn, and as you know, during war-torn countries during those times, they don't have all the resources needed for the newborn baby. So I was sick, and then I needed to be rushed back to the hospital. So my mom had to get me back to the doctor when she did. And when she was coming back on the way back, my mom thinking nothing because she's in a Christian town, a neighborhood where we're safer. And then my dad was yelling, "Sniper, sniper," because there was a sniper in the window shooting Christians. So we had to take cover and being shot at by snipers. And my mom still tells, the story of how crazy that was because we were being shot at. And it was really, really trying time for Assyrian Christians at that time there. If somebody can go to watch a movie called Argo, where something similar happened in Iran, that they were able to get, the CIA, I think, involved with trying to get the Canadians out or the Americans out through the support assistance of the Canadian embassy and everything, and they got him on a plane, and they finally, took off. Kind of a similar story in our case. They're like, okay, listen, this is what's gonna happen. We can't tell you when, but we're about to go. Get ready, pack your bags. Don't pack too much, obviously. Just be ready to go because as soon as we tell you, we're gonna go. And sure enough, they'd wait, and then in the middle of the night, they were ready to take us. They said, okay, let's go. They had buses for everybody that got us to the buses and then would take us to neighboring towns. And then from there, the neighboring towns closer, it was like different, kind of like the Underground Railroad. They'd get you to different spots. And then by that time, they would do that. They'd house us in different areas. And then the night before we flew out, or that night that we flew out, they got us near um, the airport. I put us in a hotel which was no lights and everything was evacuated because they were bombing those areas. And lights were off, everything was off. There were guards that were protecting us, that were there with us as guards that were covered. They had masks on and just rifles and just manning, which was kind of scary. But they didn't want to be, have facial recognition there. It wasn't, but they had masks to protect their identities. But they were there. And then they allowed us. They had us sleeping on the ground, outside of window views, no lights at all. And then at 2, 3 a.m., they woke everybody up and got us back on the buses and got us on the runway. There was a 747 waiting, got everybody on the plane, and then the plane took off. When the plane took off, they waited until they cleared airspace, and then it was safe because at that time there was blowing up planes and stuff was happening. So it was scary times. They were worried about that happening. So once they cleared that space, the entire plane erupted in applause. And then they got to, uh, I believe it was Greece, and from Greece, they stayed there until they got to Chicago.
And the reason your parents left Iraq, is that because of the Ba'ath Party that was about Arabization of
Yeah,
the whole country?
yeah, it was a persecution of the Assyrian Christians at that time. They left for a better opportunity. They saw the Islamization and what was happening there. The treatment by the Ba'ath Party, treating Assyrians as third-class citizens and whatnot, and they just felt that because of the our us my I wasn't born yet, but my sister, the family felt better opportunity to get to the U.S. And then this was being promoted heavily because they wanted get Christians out. And so, and that it resonated with a lot of them. And I think not that I would want to leave my ancestral homeland. We still would have a lot of people there, but some of the family that stayed and others have suffered since. It has not gotten better for them. It's gotten worse. And we were able to get to Lebanon, and then and I don't tell this lightly, but my dad took up arms to protect and defend. So did my grandfather. So did my uncles, and they were younger. My dad was he had a I was my dad was 19, 20 when he had me. So my mom and my dad when they had me. So they were young parents, but uh, they were like many of our parents, suppressing a lot of the stories. And so sometimes when we'd sit around and they would tell stories of how, like, one time my grandfather and everybody, they were just there. Um, and they had taken up arms and whatnot, but they would have snipers. They always has to worry about snipers. So my grandfather was a smoker, and once they were on the roof, and because they couldn't be, so they were on the roof. There's no lights and everything, but my grandfather lit up a cigarette, and then next thing you know, the sniper shot and he missed my grandfather, but it was because of my grandfather, because the light of the cigarette was able to identify it. And then so he just missed my grandfather, but that's how it was. And they would tell the stories of how there was tough times of no food, no resources, and families were hungry. And my father and others were working in Lebanon at one point, and different times before the war erupted. But they were working and they'd help. They were working in a hotel, and whatever food was left over or other stuff, they would get to the families, and get them food and support. But we're able to get out, but yeah, that's the story. Um, and these stories were limited, and I'd love to get more from them, but they suppressed it so much because of what happened, the trauma. And I seen the more and more of that when I started really getting involved in helping our communities in Iraq and Syria and other countries and Lebanon and others because we still have Assyrians there now and that are living in trying times. And all they want to do is get to you know, a safe place and just get to the U.S., Australia, Canada, wherever they can to you know, so they can live without fear of, or persecution or fear, and have a fair shot at life, just like we all do. And that's what we're advocate for these days, try to help them because we're in that situation. Why wouldn't they want a better situation for them? I mean, we're all human beings, and as Australian Christians, we are very family oriented, and we love to help each other. And but the most important part is to, you know, um, have safety, especially for our family. For have a future. So I'm a father of four girls, and I imagine if my family was in that now. I mean, as a father, trying to get my kids to, yeah.
Absolutely. Two things you remind me. One is with the cigarette. When Iran-Iraq war was raging, um, my father was a smoker, and he wouldn't be able to smoke when he was in the yard or outside when the Iraqis were attacking Tehran. And there were so many neighborhoods that were bombed because of Iraqi planes would see a cigarette lit and then they would drop the bombs. It was it was you just reminded me of that. That's one thing. Second thing you remind me of is the the importance of the stories being passed on to the next generation, despite the trauma that we go under, we've been under, our parents have been under. For example, my grandfather walked on foot from Ormia, northwestern Iran, all the way to Russia in 1914, but he rarely ever spoke about this. And my uncle today is absolutely just he's devastated that my grandfather didn't write these stories, didn't speak of these stories, and he
Hmm.
the stories were buried with them, and that's why what you're telling us today is so important because your daughters have to know about this, their children, your grandchildren have to know about the struggles that your parents went through in order for them to be born in the United States and bastion of freedom and comfort, really. And it's such a blessing to be today in the United States.
Yeah.
Please.
I just take it, I don't take it for granted at all. And I appreciate and love this great nation and what it does for me. Um, I know some people vilify and whatnot and throw out names and do things and colonization and blah blah blah. But listen, at the end of the day, it's this: America is the best country in the world. It's given us freedom. You can, if you work hard, you can make it, and it's proven from everybody who's done it. It's not nothing. Nobody has a level playing field, but if you work hard enough, you can navigate that field and make it. And it doesn't matter where you came from. You will you will make it if you work hard and do the right things. And so it gives you an opportunity. Other places, they require 50% tax or other things, and just to get you X, Y, and Z, and it's not guaranteed, and they could take it away at a whim. Like so many of our people, like left everything. But so my parents and everything, they, unlike other countries, they didn't weren't able to sell their land. They weren't able to bring anything with them. No bank accounts, nothing. You got to leave everything, take what you can on your person, and then have it limited, but then take it with you and to go. So you couldn't like, I'll sell my land and then I'll move over. No, like it's difficult.
And you served the United States at the capacity of a Marine. And thank you for your service, Martin.
Hmm.
We really salute you for dedicating
Yeah,
your life also to this
I
country.
I served as a United States Marine. It was my honor until I got medically discharged, and I was not did not see combat unlike my cousins and others, but it was an honor to serve. I think it's our duty for everybody to do that.
And we
So
honor you and your family service. Thank
thank
you
you.
so much for your time. I'm sure we're going to meet in the future to speak more. I would love to sit down with your parents and do this. Maybe they'll share the stories with me.
Yeah, it's an honor to do that, share with you, and hopefully one day we can, hear their stories and others because suppressing it doesn't help. It's we need to learn from our these stories.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Martin.
Okay. Thank you, Juliana. Wish you all the best. Bye.
Thank you.